Start the timer. I think there's some bets going on about how fast I'm going to get through this welcome, so it won't take long. I just want to say welcome. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it. We were thinking, we were kind of hoping today that we could have done this maybe a little bit differently out on the lawn at Mom and Dad's, overlooking the coulee on a nice sunny day, but we're thankful again for you guys joining us and that we can be in here out of the wind. Just a quick thought I thought I'd share as I've kind of been reflecting over this this time. There's a song that keeps coming to mind. Sorry. I also told myself I can't cry more than Auntie Maureen, so. It was a song that we listened to as kids by Joni, and the song was "Let God Be God," and there was a line in there, and it's "Let God be God, and let Him show us all He is," and I think that's just a message that Dad conveyed and embraced throughout his life, and just a thought that's been kind of helpful for me throughout. So, yeah. Just ask that you'd stand with us if you're able as we start off by singing "To God Be the Glory."
Rejoice. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, both in attendance here and those people that might be online. My sister Rosalind has asked me to share a couple of stories of Ralph. So as many people know, things about me is most of my stories are true. Sometimes there's fake news. And I'd like the grandchildren to pay particular attention to see if they can figure out if there's any fake news in my stories today. In preparation for today, I did not need to do extensive research, as I usually do when I've been asked to speak on occasions like this, as I already knew quite a few things about Ralph. A bit of family history. He was 71 years and 8 months old when he passed away. I know this because we were born only 6 days apart. He was married to Rosalind and remained faithful to her throughout their marriage of 47 years. Ralph's mother, Barb, would be the first to say that Ralph married above his pay grade. Rosalind's sisters, Vivian and Evelyn, who are here today, would be the first to say that she married into a very large extended family. I've known Ralph for a long time, 62 years approximately. His dad, William, or Bill, was a friend of my dad before Rosalind and Ralph became friends. And Bill was involved with Crow's Nest Lake Bible Camp as a speaker and a director when I was 9 years old. I remember he led a hike up Century Mountain, which I climbed at that age, and Crow has been an influence in the Gurnett family for every generation since. My grandchildren, or our grandchildren, with Sheila and I, Jonah, Emmett, Cora, Anna, and Julie, you might have to wait a couple of years before going to camp and climbing up that mountain, although I was surprised when Brian and Angela took their family, together with Mark and Pauline's family, and Loran and John Hengen's family, up Crow's Nest Mountain this past summer. Brian's youngest son, Levi, was only 4 years old. All things are possible, I guess. Yeah. Ralph's father-in-law, Cy Bryant, was my dad. He was a dentist in his professional life, and his motto was much like a famous U.S. president: drill, baby, drill. This practice kept the lights on and his family fed. Ralph's mother-in-law, Edith, a.k.a. Nurse Bunker, was quick to find God's silver lining in all of life's circumstances, including the decisions that her children made in regards to marriage. She welcomed Ralph into our family just as if he was one of us. To my knowledge, it was the same for all of the spouses of my siblings. During our early 20s, Ralph and I lived together in Edmonton, in the basement of Mrs. Borgsted's home for a couple of years before he married Rosalind. Later, I sometimes have wondered how interested he was in living with me at the time, when secretly he may have been more interested in marrying Rosalind and living with her. I think I may have been but a conduit to this ultimate game plan, which seems to, in retrospect, have worked out. Suspicion had it that when Ralph was a young boy living in Youngstown, his father Bill and his mother Barb surmised that their son was different. Oh, did I say different? I meant to say special. As such, they took him to a psychiatrist in Blackfalds to confirm their suspicions. This is how I believe the conversation went down in the doctor's office. Barb: "Doctor, we have been worried about our little Ralphie. He's not like other kids." Doctor: "What do you mean?" Barb: "Yesterday, we left him alone for just a few minutes, and he disassembled the riding lawnmower, the snowmobile, and the couch." The doctor: That's normal. Kids take things apart. Bill, oh, that may be true, but the part that worries me is that he used the components to build a car and is showing tendencies to upholster the complete interior, including the headliner and the dashboard, with material from the couch. Doctor, oh dear, now that's unusual. Barb, is that bad? The doctor, I normally would run an EEG on him, but the machine isn't working. Meanwhile, Ralph was in the background and fixed the EEG while they were talking. Doctor, it's worse than I feared. Barb, what is it, doctor? The doctor, I'm afraid your son has the knack. Barb, the knack? Doctor, the knack. It's a rare condition characterized by an extreme intuition about all things mechanical and electrical and utter social ineptitudes. Bill, can he lead a normal life? Doctor, no, he will be a quasi-engineer, a mechanic, a full-time upholsterer with an innate musical gene and a side hustle of selling insurance. Barb starts to cry. Doctor, there, don't blame yourself, Barb. Bill's a part of this too, you know. Bill, will it go away over time? Doctor, it might, but pray it doesn't. If a quasi-engineer, mechanic, full-time upholsterer with an innate musical gene and a side hustle of selling insurance loses the knack, the results can be devastating. Barb, thanks for filling in for our regular doctor on such short notice. The doctor, no problem. I was in the neighborhood. Ralph had a big interest in cars. And in the mid-1970s were the days when muscle cars were in vogue, fast and needing fixing, all of the time. And for Ralph, money was scarce. So a good fix was cheaper than a new vehicle and just a few bucks away. Ralph's motto was, no money, no problem. Ralph was always up for quick engine rebuild or transmission swap out, following all of the precise directions outlined in the Chiltern automotive manuals. There was a time in Fort McMurray when Ralph had repaired an engine, all according to Chilton, and was about to start it up before bolting the manifold back on. He realized that he had left a rag deep within the block, had to take everything apart and rebuild it again. Just a minor setback to greatness. The '67 Malibu was classic and just the right car for challenging anyone off the line on White Avenue in Edmonton on a Friday night when there's not much else to do. This car was an assuming sleeper, but Ralph had put a few extra parts into it to give it the extra jump that there were not many times that he succumbed to defeat. Oh, did I mention the fancy Lincoln Continental? It burned to the ground on New Year's Day. Yes, I do. He had tuned up the carburetor in the garage, moved the car out to the parking lot, leaving it to run and warm up. By the time that he came out to check on it, it was engulfed in flames. We called the local volunteer Crow's Nest Pass Fire Department, and by the time they arrived, it was beyond saving. Just for the fun of it, and not to waste a good New Year's Day outing, they took turns with their pickaxes to break the windows, and all 14 of them stood around watching with glee while the car burned to an unrecognizable state. Did I mention the Caddy? I bought my first car from Ralph. I'd never thought that I would own a Cadillac, AKA the Caddy, but there I was, just killing it in style. It wasn't a Caddy, but it had many similarities. Had floorboards without holes and windows all the way around. What do you expect for $350? If you were curious and wanted to check out some of the finer specs of this beauty, the 1963 Plymouth Valiant two-door hardtop, please consult with Dr. Google. For those not as interested, I can share that this car, spanking new off of the assembly line in Detroit, made in the USA, had a sparkling white exterior with a dazzling red interior. By the time I'd purchased the caddy from Ralph, the sparkling white exterior had transitioned into a version of rusty orange in various spots. As you know, I'm familiar with rust. It's kind of grown on me. The red interior was showing its age and would have presented itself better with a couple of Botox injections to cover up the wrinkles and the lines. The push-button radio did work well, however, for the 2 stations that were available, and the windows rolled up and down with some degree of manual effort. There were front and back seat ashtrays for smoking convenience. The seats, rug, and steering wheel were matching red, giving that sense of distinguished royalty. The car was powered by time-tested fossil fuels, none of this electric stuff found in the modern vehicles of 2025. No computers or GPS either. It had a modest carbon footprint with a 3-speed manual column shift. I'm sure I've lost a few of you already. The motor was a slant 6, 225cc with a maximum speed of 95. These were all important things to Ralph, although I can never remember reaching any speed beyond 69 miles per hour. For this reason, I generally tried to draft behind the car in front of me, which gave the caddy a bit of reprieve from having to work so hard. Now, the real reason for providing this context was the price. One might ask, why would such a marvel only sell for $350 back in the day? Today, these masterpieces, if they have been maintained, may sell upwards of $10,000. Well, here's the rest of the story. The caddy was severely traumatized on a trip on the QE2 going north on a sunny afternoon from Calgary to Edmonton, from which there was no real recovery, and consequently, the value deteriorated rather dramatically. Ralph was a proud owner of the caddy at the time, and the car was full of young adults, guys and girls, looking for cheap transportation. Ralph was generous at the time because those were the days when you needed to be generous just to have friends. Well, our trip was going along just fine until a car pulled up beside us, and then it happened. Instead of a friendly wave, as was common in the day, we were shockingly mooned. Jeannie S. was sitting in the back seat at the time in nursing school at the Foothills Hospital, always wanting to get to the bottom of things, piped up and asked, "Who is that?" Ralph didn't quite know, and he certainly wasn't going to have them pull over for us to ask them, nor did he feel comfortable in requesting them to take part in an on-the-spot DNA test. I just can't remember what conversations happened over the next 2 hours, but I don't think the car was quiet. Although time had passed, the memory has been firmly etched in my mind. I was, however, truly thankful that Ralph didn't charge me full price. Ralph and I made many puzzles together. They were the all weekend long puzzle escapades. Our motto was always, just get her done. It was not unusual to complete a 3,000-piece puzzle by breakfast on Sunday when we started it on Friday evening. If there was a final piece missing, it most certainly would show up later, hidden somewhere in the house. No one ever owned up to having hid it. Ralph worked on puzzles to the very end. I think that he would say that it wasn't a Sudoku or a crossword that was the greatest challenge, but the most complicated puzzle he tried to solve was Rosalind. My thoughts were, good luck, Ralph. Ralph's legacy. Ralph had 1 wife, 3 children, Mark, Brian, and Loran, 3 add-ons, Pauline, Angela, and John, 17 grandchildren, Hannah, Luke, Natasha, Titus, Emily, Austin, Joel, Ethan, Levi, Cadence, Allison, Leah, May Claire, Abe, Ada, Amos, Abigail, and on and on and on and on. All of them are here today. Did I mention you also had a brother-in-law, maybe 3, myself, Ray, and Ed, and 2 sisters-in-law, Vivian and Evelyn, that appreciated him greatly. He loved and took care of our sister. He has 5 siblings, Lester, Royce, Myrna, Maureen, and Laura, numerous nieces, nephews, cousins-in-laws, too many to mention by name, let alone count. His Christian faith and trust in Jesus has significantly influenced subsequent generations. Some would say that Ralph had left an indelible legacy, which is true. Ralph might say that he started with nothing and he still had most of it left. The brevity of life. In times of crisis and death, our sense of what is truly important in life is often comes into clearer focus. In Psalm 90, as Moses looked at life from beginning to end, he realized that life was short and eternity was certain. He made a plea to God for understanding. Teach us to number our days and recognize how few they are. Help us to spend them as we should. Ralph's days have now been numbered. He lived 26,175 days. It sounds like a lot, but in the span of eternity, it's but a drop. His life has come to an end. Many may say that his death is untimely, but with God, all things are timely. For those of us that remain, each of our lives will be numbered. There's no guarantee how long we have to live. Our numbered days and the relative shortness of life remind us to embrace God's everlasting love, call out for his mercy, and focus on the more important things of life, like 1, loving God and loving each other. 2, not be so caught up in storing up for ourselves treasures on earth, but rather storing up treasures in heaven. 3, reconciliation with family and fellow man. Asking for forgiveness for wrongs committed is hard, but saying sorry leads to healing and freedom. 4, reconciliation with God. Don't wait. The Bible does not promise any of us another day, but it does say that now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. In conclusion, life can be similar to a 3,000-piece puzzle. You try to fit all the pieces together, but at the end of the life, much like a puzzle, everything goes back into the box. This should bring focus to our remaining days. To Rosalind and your family, may God richly bless you as you navigate the days ahead and an uncertain future. We don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. We love you.
My God. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dwayne Felzine. I was neighbor with Ralph and Rosalind, still am. This won't be as polished and refined as Vic's. It's one of the more difficult things that one has to do, but here we go. Hi, everyone. It is an honor to be with you all here today, not to grieve, but to celebrate a great friend. Typically, one starts with welcoming friends, family, relatives, neighbors, and acquaintances. It is interesting how we differentiate people into groups. I do not recall Ralph ever doing that. To Ralph, everyone was treated as a friend, part of a community where everyone looks out for each other and is always there for one another. Each very different, but everyone the same. Ralph and Rosalind came into our community and reinforced friendship into our daily lives. The beginning. There was a land auction, a new process, a new format. You could bid the highest bid, but not win the bid. Confusion everywhere. End of the day, all dust settled, someone from Fort McMurray bought a homestead overlooking the scenic Battle River Valley. Newcomers. Our island, as it is known, lies between the Painterth Coulee and the Battle River Valley, homesteaded by Europeans in the early 1900s and home to several indigenous groups for hundreds, if not thousands, of years prior. So yes, newcomers were arriving. Many years later, Ralph would ask, "How long do you have to be here not to be considered a newcomer?" I would respond, "I've been here over 40 years and I'm still a newcomer, so I don't know." But today, Ralph, you're not a newcomer anymore. Locals were too busy with life, families, farming, jobs, and whatnot to rush out and meet our new friends and neighbors. As Ralph and Rosalind settled in, they initiated a determined path forward into their new life and community. Someone bought a rock to be placed as a sign of "this is our home." Someone might have needed help to place the rock. Thus and into the community. Off they went. Help arrived with new friends and bonds. Ralph and Rosalind reached out offering help, support, and trust to everyone they encountered. They hosted a community Thanksgiving. Having met only a few, they never knew if anyone would show. Everyone showed. A great event. Their door was always open and always welcoming. Ralph formed an early bond with Gerald and Brenda, who lived a mile up the road. Ralph was very thankful that Gerald helped him fulfill a dream of farming. Gerald engaged Ralph in his farming operation, giving full trust to Ralph's skills as an operator and a repair expert. Something that has been missing from that rural boy from Youngstown, Alberta. Ralph committed his time and skills to Gerald right up to the completion of the 2024 harvest. Ralph knew at this time it was his last harvest. Gerald will be listening for Ralph's lost cell phone every harvest going forward. It will ring. Over the years, Ralph and Rosalind created many bonds and true friendships within our community. Terry and Peg, Gerald and Brenda, Steve and Bonnie, Doug and Lynn, Jan and Rose, Tony and Lorraine, Donnie and Dean, Gerard and Donna, Tom and Doreen, Terrence and Jennifer, and his crib partner and therapist, Brian. The list goes on and on. Special ties and an understanding of like minds were formed with Donnie, Brian, Gerard, and ourselves. Scary stuff. We watched as Ralph committed his time and understanding with Donnie through his struggles with cancer, right up to Donnie's passing. A true friend, always there, always listening. Ralph made himself available to everyone around him with skills, equipment, knowledge, and an outlook that kept us all unsure of what he was really thinking. That look of, "Why would you do that?" He was never questioning, never challenging, just understanding with a smile. As Ralph moves forward to his next great challenge and purpose, we will miss the smile, the help, the friendship, and support. Ralph had the ability to always show up when someone was in need. The extra set of hands, a different outlook or point of view, or just a smile of support. We will cherish the daily coffee clashes at the shop, the 6:30 a.m. text, "Coffee's on," the endless crib games with Ralph most always holding the winning hand. If he did not, you couldn't leave until he did. We will smile and remember when we lay water pipe, move equipment, fix that corner post nudge from equipment that just wouldn't quite fit through the gate. We will remember the barn raising, the Halkirk house renovations, pickups and drop-offs whenever someone needed a ride. We will miss Ralph always having the right part or tool or skill for any challenge at hand. We will cherish the times of storytelling, laughter, and sharing that came with countless hours of windshield time, bonding, and exploring. I do not know how much Ralph shared his inner thoughts and feelings, but I do know how proud he is of the love and joy he has for his only love and partner, Rosalind. Kids, Mark and Pauline, Brian and Ange, Loran and John. Your spectacular children, his grandchildren. He spoke of you all often, and he gleamed with pride, sharing your life's tales and accomplishments. And no, Loran, there are no pink or purple jobs. Or pink or blue jobs, only purple. Ralph always said thank you, whether you helped him or he was helping you. So in closing, to Ralph and all the Gurnett family, we say thank you. You are family. Thank you, Ralph. You will be missed and remembered always. God bless.
Good afternoon, folks. I didn't know Ralph very well at all, but I knew about him. And I knew one thing, I knew he was smart because he married my beautiful, loving, gracious cousin, Rosalind. And I am so honored today to be here and to be able to sing one of his favorite songs, God and God Alone. God and God alone created all these things we call our own. From the mighty to the small, the glory in them all is God's and God's alone. God and God alone reveals the truth of all we call unknown. And all the best and worst of man won't change the master plan. It's God's and God's alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives reserve its truest praise for God and God alone.
and God alone will be the joy of our eternal home. He will be our one desire. Our hearts will never tire of God and God alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives reserve its truest praise for God and God alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives reserve its truest praise for God and God. Let everything that lives reserve its truest praise for God and God alone. Amen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Luke Gurnett. I'm the third oldest grandchild, the grandchild that somehow managed to get entrusted to a lot of the Kubota responsibilities, a lot of the heavy lifting, and what I like to think was the most difficult child labor. Grandpa had a shirt hung over his toolbox that read, "To save time, let's just assume I know everything." But as I've gotten older, I've realized that wasn't true, and it maybe should have said, "To save time, let's just assume I have everything." But it always stuck out to me how generous Grandpa was with all this stuff and all his time. And this was especially true with us grandkids. For some reason, Grandpa always poured out all his energy into making sure us grandkids had a good time when we came around. He'd spend time working on everything from go-karts, chuck wagons, to bikes and snowmobiles, land yachts, and even like bucking Broncos that you'd tow behind Kubotas. He rarely let us go without getting a ride in the Kubota or behind it. I can distinctly remember working with Grandpa in the shop as he went about fixing and creating some of these things. But for some odd reason, I was always the one working, the one wrenching away on things, while he was pacing around the shop, trying to figure out where he put some scrap piece of metal or tool he misplaced. Once he got tired of looking, we'd often sit down and have a Pepsi together, and then contemplate on how we'd get the job done without that thing. But unfortunately, this would often mean an alternative solution, including guardless grinders, severe back pain, and no earplugs. Aside from this, when Grandpa was around, we knew we would be treated right. He made sure we had a double portion of ice cream and always a hot tub soak to finish off the day. He loved to treat us with a pretty long-winded jokes around the dinner table. He would wheeze at them, but us grandkids I don't really think got the punchlines half the time. So we kind of just laughed along with him and made him feel better. He often had his Bible around and was willing to share tidbits of something he'd been reading or a passage he's been looking at. Although he could have been fooling me, he seemed pretty wise. He was slow to speak and served as a great example to all us grandchildren. I'm going to let Cadence take it away now.
Alrighty. There's a little bit of a difference. When I think of Grandpa, I remember how much of a natural teacher he was, which he kind of touched on. He included little lessons in everything, intentionally and unintentionally, I'm pretty sure. Some lessons were harder to pull out of him than others, though. Like if you ask him a question, sometimes he'd flip the question on you. Like, for example, if you're driving and you say, "Grandpa, is this the turn?" He'd say, "Do you see the sign?" Like, "Can you read what it says?" "So can you tell me, is this our turn?" That's little things like that. He liked to force us to consider the why and how of whatever we were doing. And from my limited perspective, everything he did seemed to come from this desire to understand, or a desire to help us understand. I think there was no just because about him. Everything had a purpose or a reason. I think we all already miss his quietly encouraging, practical yet contemplative way of teaching, and we'll continue to miss those lessons for as long as we're still coming up with the questions. We'd like to share some memories compiled by all of the grandkids of moments with Grandpa. Quick disclaimer, these stories were written down almost exactly as they were told by the grandkids, so Grandma, we apologize in advance for all the horrendous grammatical errors you're about to be subjected to.
Oh, perfect. This one's from Ada, grandkid number 12. We all had Grandpa wipe our face, and he would always do the right hand, and then he would do the left hand, and it was always so scary, but it was so fun, and you always didn't want him to do it to you, but you always wanted him to do it to you.
Abby, number 15. I remember when Grandpa would help us start the go-karts, and it was really fun riding the go-karts. And I remember one time when he really helped me, Amos, and Abe. We were on the big go-kart, and we went all the way down the driveway, and then right when we were turning around to go the other way, we ran out of gas. So we walked all the way down the driveway, and we saw Grandpa, and we told him what happened, and then we got in the Kubota, and Grandpa got some gas, and then we went all the way back down the driveway. We gave the gas to the go-kart, and then me and Abe and Amos went on the go-kart all the way down, and Grandpa followed in the Kubota. Okay.
You do that one.
Sure. Ethan, number 16. I remember watching curling and playing crokinole with Grandpa.
This one's from Hannah, the first oldest. Playing crib, learning how to play Sudoku, and he proved he could do 10 push-ups at the 2023 Christmas. And actually, he did a one-handed push-up at that same time, which was quite impressive, and I'm still blown away. I challenged him to a competition is how it started, actually, and I was kind of humbled, so. I'll do another one. This one's from Austin, number 10. When he nailed his fingers with the nail gun, he didn't make a big scene, but just taped them up with electrical tape and acted like nothing happened. Grandpa's snoring. Grandpa gave us a giant serving of ice cream. Cadence will do this next one.
Levi is the youngest one, number 17. He always had snacks in the combine. I remember when Grandpa pulled us by sleds in the Kubota. What's the other one? Oh, I was supposed to do that one.
No, it's okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
This one's from Natasha, the fifth oldest grandchild. The last words that Grandpa said to me and Titus was, last words that Grandpa said to me and Titus. We were sitting in the living room, chatting for a bit, and then Grandpa says, I'm going to close my eyes for a minute. But I'm still listening, so be careful what you say. I can still change my will. I got this one? Yeah.
He made that joke a couple times, just for the record. It wasn't the once. Okay, this one's from Allison, grandkid number 4. I remember driving with him in his truck, and I saw a piece of sheet music on the dash. I made some comment about being surprised at seeing music in there, since I knew he didn't play anything. Of course, when we got back home, he had to go sit down at the piano and start playing a hymn that was probably in the key of A flat. All I could do was deal with the smug smile that wouldn't come off his face and ask Mom where in the world Grandpa learned to play piano. Grandpa often did or said things that reminded me not to say something that I didn't actually know, and I could certainly never hold up against him with a half-baked argument.
This one's from Joel, number 13. Whenever he had a job for you, he'd make it fun. Like instead of shoveling the sidewalk, we'd use a leaf blower. I remember lots of times when Grandpa would just do little things for us, like give us money to buy a treat. He was always so generous. He was always helping us to fix up and build our house.
Last one, from Emily, grandkid number 7. He mentioned a verse in a story he shared this past Christmas. We don't have a reference, but it is in the Bible, I'm sure. Whosoever shall receive one such in my name receiveth me. For I was hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these of my brethren, you have done it to me. And then she says, I could tell that this was important to Grandpa, and I think that he did a good job of putting these words into action in his own life.
I don't think this was in the program, but I think this song needs a little intro. I'm going to play a song called The Lighthouse, and the reason I want to play it is because Grandpa mentioned at this last Christmas that it was really important to him. And so I'd never heard it before, but I went home and learned it, and then I sent it to him in a video, and then he asked, or someone asked to have it today. So that's why I'm up here and playing it. And I'm grandchild number 4. There's a lighthouse on the hillside that overlooks life's sea. When I'm tossed, it sends out a light that I might see, and the light that shines in darkness now will safely lead us o'er. If it wasn't for that lighthouse, my ship would be no more. I thank God for the lighthouse. I owe my life to Him. Jesus is the lighthouse, and from the rocks of sin He has shown a light around me that I might clearly see. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, where would this ship be? comes everybody that lives about us, wants to tear that old lighthouse down. The big ships don't pass this way anymore, so there's no use in it standing round. Then my mind goes back to that stormy night when just in time I saw the light from that old lighthouse standing on the hill. I thank God for the lighthouse. I owe my life to Him. Jesus is the lighthouse, and from the rocks of sin He has shone a light around me, that I might clearly see. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, tell me, where would this ship be?
Good afternoon. I'm Maureen, sister number 2. I was a little surprised at Brian's suggestion that I was a crier, when clearly I've always been known as the rock.
How could we have forgotten?
I know, I was shocked. Our parents' first 4 children, Lester, Royce, Myrna, and Ralph, were born within 6 years. I arrived 6 years later, followed closely by Laura. Fortunately for Laura, the first 4 were old enough to actively intercede in the choosing of her name, so she was spared. But I digress. From what I can gather, the 2 older brothers spent most of their growing up years getting into trouble together, and by her account, Myrna was the upstairs maid. Apparently, Ralph just basked in being the baby until we younger 2 came along and reshaped his destiny. Maybe it had to do with birth order, or perhaps it was just his natural disposition, but Ralph was, I'd say, an unusually introspective individual from an early age. He liked to know how things worked, and he loved the challenge of fixing or salvaging something that had been discarded. He shared this interest with our dad, and I remember often finding them in deep conversation as they worked, typically Ralph asking questions about faith and the Bible. He was an unconventional thinker, and it was referenced earlier, but his interest was in the how and why of things, and it carried over into issues of Christianity. I remember him being 13 or 14 the summer that he and Dad spent countless hours converting the remains of an old lawnmower into a go-kart. Clearly not a racing lawnmower, or not a racing go-kart. Either one, neither raced. This would prove to be a lifelong passion of Ralph's, not the building of a go-kart specifically, but a dedication to producing some pretty fascinating things without ever paying full price for a single part. He loved an auction, like his brothers, and according to Lester, was an auctioneer's dream, the guy who would go looking for 1 or 2 things, but could always be persuaded to also take the 7 or 8 cases of the same thing they had in the back. I suppose a person can never have too many cases of windshield washer fluid. Unlike the other siblings that set out on their own pretty early, Ralph lived at home until Laura and I were well into our teens. I learned a lot of things from him over the years, through both conversation and observation. He challenged me to question, not to blindly accept things I was told, not to follow tradition simply for the sake of tradition. He encouraged me to want to understand people, to seek discernment, and to extend grace. He loved to discuss, some might say debate, God and the complexities of how our faith is reflected in the way we live our lives. He was always questioning, always learning. I had several opportunities to engage with him in long conversations over the years, as did some of you, I'm sure. Ours frequently ended with him assuring me that I was entitled to my opinion even though it was wrong, to which I would respond with an equal measure of grace, and then we would laugh. I suspect a few of you can more relate to what was a rare and gratifying occurrence for me. The pause, slow removal of the toothpick from the corner of his mouth, and then, well, you've got a point. Ralph loved to tease. He felt that most people tend to take themselves a little too seriously, so he was a pretty merciless tease. If you had the fortitude to hold your own in some quick and sarcastic banter, know that you brought him a lot of joy. Anyone who knew him well can no doubt envision him folded over in laughter, holding his stomach with tears streaming down his face, gasping for air. I think someone referred to it as the wheeze, and I think that was it. I have to say it was very rewarding to be responsible for that. Underneath what may have been regarded by some who didn't know him well as a bit of a crusty exterior, Ralph was very kind and compassionate. I know a lot of people here, already referenced, have been recipients of his quiet helpfulness. He wasn't exactly Martha Stewart, but fortunately he married an understated version of her. And he and Ralph hosted meals and conversations with hundreds of people over the years. They lived humbly and shared generously together. I don't think Ralph was thrilled to receive the unexpected news that his time here was coming to an end. He wasn't the guy to brag about his family, not that I heard, but he finally felt free to say how immensely proud he was of his 3 wonderful kids, who married equally wonderful spouses, and produced a whole lot of lovely grandchildren. And I know he felt abundantly blessed with the life he was given. He was looking forward to meeting and finally fully knowing the God he'd spent his entire life striving to understand. Now he'll have the answers to all his questions. And I truly hope that when he saw our mom in heaven, she was happy with his haircut.
What gift of bring me home. And day by day, I know He will renew me until I stand with joy before the throne. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. All my glory evermore to Him. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. Yet not I, but through Christ in me.
It was during a phone call with a friend this week. It occurred to me that I was looking forward to this day with you folks. In the process, I was going to have to address two of my greatest fears: the real potential that you might see me cry in public, and that some of you are still going to want to hug when this is all over. We're talking about memories of Dad. We had fishing, we had snowmobiling, we had wiener roasts and music festivals up north. We had building houses. There it is. You've seen it. We had fixing stuff, and we had playing with his grandkids down south. It's a lot harder to read when your eyes are so wet. Dad was unconventional. My first realization of this, I think my first realization was in high school, when I realized that everybody else had a curfew and I didn't. I didn't have a curfew, none of us did, but he was always there to greet us at the door when we got home, usually without anything more than a "How was your night?" I remember once coming in about 5, and Dad was still awake. And all I got was, "We start painting the deck at 9. He was different. He was different. Dad loved to work, and oddly for me, it seemed to find some rest in what others would call work. While everybody else seemed to get a lazy Sunday afternoon off, Brian and I got lessons in framing, drywall, roofing, and first aid. He would joke, "I finally got you two useful around here, and then you go out and move." Most of you don't know, Dad took months at a time out of his schedule to come help all three of us build or renovate our homes. Dad's view of Dad's view of time seemed to change over the years. When he was running a shop, everything was based around time, how quickly he could get something done. And it took him a while, but he seemed to be able to reprogram himself once he moved south. What's the rush? It'll be there tomorrow. And if this is what the Lord would have me do, then who am I to question it? Dad was caring. He loved Mom. And their joint care for Mom's parents in their last years was impressive.
We all saw a level of care in Dad that I don't think anybody here, or would be fair to say that no one here thought would have been possible. When you were around Dad, you knew you mattered. He had a funny way of saying it, but he cared. Oh, you worry too much. Or you're so emotional. And his favorite, just put it away. Were all thinly veiled ways of conveying his deep-rooted concern for us. Sometimes his concern for you came out in a way that sounded a lot more like advice or occasionally a threat. In high school, it sounded like, if you're in trouble, I don't ever want to hear about it third hand. As we got older and had kids, his advice was, don't ever ask them to do something you're not close enough to enforce. And as we started careers, it was, don't ever ask someone to do something that you aren't first willing to do yourself. If we were ever feeling sick, the remedy was always the same. A bath so hot you can barely stand it and a good night's sleep. Dad was determined. He was willing to go through with something even if all the details hadn't been ironed out yet. All part of the adventure. One step at a time, even if those steps were aimed at Mom's moving targets. It wasn't necessarily the goal or the destination that mattered, but our attitudes along the way, he would say. What good was a mistake if you didn't learn from it? He enjoyed the creative process of making stuff. But when it came to anything else, the all part of the adventure usually meant getting lost, stuck, or breaking down. Dad was a maker. He was inventive, but he was a maker. He managed to strike the right balance. As an early adopter of technology and an organized, very organized, but borderline hoarder of the odd and unusual. Growing up, I remember being the first to have a home computer, the first to have internet, a cell phone, or a digital camera. I also remember trips to the dump, and on the way out, he would pick up an old bike, a chair, a wagon, saying something like, "You wouldn't believe what some people are willing to just throw out." Dad had a knack for taking the old and discarded. He had the knack. We heard about that. That's funny. Dad had a knack for taking on the old and discarded and turning them into something profoundly useful and occasionally useless. Go-karts, potato pickers, pill crushers, a chicken coop, an elevator to the up top, and at least 3 different versions of some kind of tow-behind lawnmower for the quad, just before he would break down and buy a used riding lawnmower. I'd like to think that the 3 of us kids were some of his proudest works. But because he and Mom had committed us to the Lord early in our lives, he knew we were never only his. As the firstborn, I was the prototype, I think. Perhaps where he was his most scrutinizing, careful to make sure I didn't screw up or disobey, and not afraid to use a good spanking to make a point of when I did. Secondborn was Brian, the working model. I can't even say that with a straight face. Whew. I'm laying it on thick. He was a quick learner. He saw the consequences for my mistakes, so didn't make so many of his own. And now that he's the only one of the 3 of us with actual formal employment, the title working model has never been more appropriate. Lastborn was Loran, the production model. I don't even have to say the rest. Like Brian, that title may be now more appropriate than ever. She has 8 kids. Lorraine does almost everything right, and we could all use more of her in our lives. Dad's creative process applied to how he and Mom raised us, not so concerned about what or who we would become, but who we were and who we were emulating in the process. His tendency for scrutiny was consistent, and we were never out of that line of questioning. As we got older and actually interested in his opinions and his friendship, his questions were still the same. Oh, who cares? Or what for? Or when can I be there? Where are you going with those peanuts? Or why would you do a thing like that? And finally, how would you feel if they did that to you? His scrutiny stood out. Yeah, he was perceptive of the negative in situations, in institutions, in traditions, and in people. But he was the most perceptive of the faults in himself. Jesus paid the price for any fault, error, or sin in his life, and he trusted that. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually do it. And he did. He trusted it. He'd been given and received grace in abundance, and so he had hope in the eternal. If the grace of Jesus could apply to him, then it must apply to everyone else too. And like his collection of old and discarded parts, his observation of the flaws and faults in anything and anyone wasn't judgment, but a recognition of the potential in our lives, where God could do a good work. We're not remembering a perfect man, we're remembering the good, redemptive work that Christ has done in an imperfect man's life. We had a running joke in our family. It hurts when I do this, which was usually me. And the answer was always the same. Well, then stop doing it. Which was usually Dad or Brian. Dad understood the value of pain. Some of the books he referenced most were by Dr. Paul Brandt and Philip Yancey, which describe the gift of pain. So important to our human bodies as a signal to our brains to do something different. I know that grief is part of this process, and it's okay for a time, but it hurts when I do this. And I suspect the pain of the grief is somehow good, because the gift of pain is our prompt to do something different. And so we shift our focus, because we do not grieve like those who have no hope. We don't cry because of sadness, but because of an overwhelming gratitude. And we are a thankful people.
Hello, my name is John Hangen. I'm Ralph's daughter, Loran's husband. And I would just like to say it's been a real privilege. I'm very thankful to have married into this family and gotten to know Ralph over the last 20-some years. We as a family want to thank you again for making the effort, taking time out of your schedules to come and remember and celebrate Ralph's life with us here today. We really do appreciate it. It's nice to have you here. After this last song, any help you can give with setting up tables and chairs so that we can stay here a bit longer and spend more time together visiting is appreciated if you're able. There will also be some snacks, so please feel free to help yourself when you see those made available. On their wedding day, Rosalind sang a prayer for Ralph and herself that Ralph believes God answered. That song was Savior, like a shepherd lead us. Ralph's hope and prayer was for his wife and descendants to continue seeking after God and for him to lead in their lives. So that's why we'd like to sing this song now. It seems very fitting to sing this song today. We hope it can be your hope and prayer also. So we'd be honored if you think it's appropriate to join us in singing it. Thank you.